You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Ashley Hardgrave, joined today by my friends Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, and Weston Williams. All right, this week, in advance of the Puccini Heroines and all-Puccini arias concert at Lyric Opera of Chicago, Sondra Radvanovsky takes a free throw on singing the role of Turandot. Compared to Norma and Aida, you may be surprised to hear it's one of her easier roles. And then... Listener Mailbag, we have field reports on all the vocal activity at Carnegie Hall, including Song Studio, friend of the show Ying Fang with the Orchestra of St Luke's, and friend of the show Ryan Speedo Green in recital with pianist Adam Nielsen. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, there is good news for 2025. Soprano Lise Davidsen announced that she is having twins. And if they are fraternal twins who inherit their mom's voice, maybe in 2055, we have a future dream team, Sieglinde and Siegmund. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. You're going to click follow on Apple Podcasts. You're going to hit that little plus sign. You can also email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com. Or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you will get the dream package of an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot takes. Speaking of hot, Oliver Camacho, how are you?
I'm finally getting sleep because the Australian Open concluded. Heartbreaker for Coco Gauff and Carlos Alcaraz, my two picks to win. But good news on the women's side. Madison Keys won her first Grand Slam, American Madison Keys, taking out world #1 and world #2 along the way. It was an incredible tournament for her. Carlos Alcaraz was eliminated in the quarterfinals in his matchup with Novak Djokovic, enemy of tennis. And I was so mad at Novak Djokovic because he was quote unquote injured in the first set.
In the first act.
What is this, Challengers?
He took some medicines and then he came roaring back. And I think Carlos Alcaraz is just too nice to have capitalized on the injury, span. It was clear that his movement was, affected, and he could have really taken advantage of it and, taken Novak Djokovic out in the second set, but he was playing a little bit cautiously to not, over test Novak's mobility. Anyway, Novak came roaring back and won in 4 sets. And then in his very next matchup in the semifinals, he retired after the first set. So if he would have just retired during the Novak Djokovic match, we would have had, I think, a more interesting final. World #1 Jannik Sinner demolished Alex Zverev or Sasha Zverev in the final. A pretty boring finale to the Australian Open. Didn't need to lose sleep over that. But I'm realizing that I'm sort of a hypocrite because, just a couple weeks ago we were talking about singers and if they're injured, if they're not well, they should just, not go on, and nobody should criticize them for leaving for retiring in the middle of a performance. But here I am all salty at Novak Djokovic for pulling out, during the semifinals. So
You're part of the problem.
I am the problem.
Matt, are you as salty about this whole circumstance, or are you salty about something else entirely?
I am just glad that we have at least one little ray of light where we can be proud of America this week, because there were not many. You can take that as salt should you be so inclined, because we're basically licking the seawater at this point.
Well, opposite of salty is sweet. Speaking of sweet, Weston Williams, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty great. I mean, considering everything, things are looking up for our podcast and our podcast only, because I want to give a shout out to Brian in Forest Hills, New York, who gave us a donation. Imagine that. We really do appreciate it. We really could not do this without the help of our loyal listeners, whether you're listening, donating, whatever you want to do. If you want to join the OBS Hive, we should have a fan club name. The OBS
We'll workshop it. We'll figure something out.
Donate on our website, operaboxscore.com, and let us know what we should call the fan club.
Indeed. Things are looking up for us. Things are also looking up for the 2 remaining NFL teams standing. The Super Bowl is set for February the 9th. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs against the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a matchup that we just had not too many years ago.
Big news for enemy of the show, Tobias Wright.
Big news for Tobias Wright. Noted Chiefs fan. I'm really excited for Taylor Swift's boyfriend's team. I'm also really excited for Taylor Swift's possible brother-in-law's ex-team. But mostly what I'm excited about is my prediction, which is Chiefs by 7. But I'm also excited about Kendrick Lamar and his Pulitzer Prize headlining the halftime show, which is the first time that a solo rapper has been the main headliner. That is your rap trivia for today.
He got a Pulitzer before?
Yeah, his Pulitzer was in 17, and I think he did a Super Bowl appearance, but he was one of several. So this is the second time a Pulitzer Prize winner has been in a Super Bowl halftime show.
It is the first time that a Pulitzer Prize winner is hosting the Super Bowl halftime show for the second time.
There you go. That's it. Dear Diary, today is a special day. At any rate, let's talk some opera.
Free throw.
Sondra Radvanovsky returns to Lyric Opera of Chicago for another one of her incredible feats. Just a few years ago, she sang the Donizetti Three Tudor Queens finales in concert. And after having already sung roles like Lady Macbeth and Norma and Amelia and a Mass Ball, she only does hard things. She is coming to Chicago to sing an aria from every Puccini opera. I guess that's 14 arias. And I can confirm that she will conclude with In Questa Regia.
Something light for the finale.
Just a nice stroll.
Of course, along the way, we will get Visi d'arte. So why not, before we hear this free throw on the role of Turandot, a little bit of Sondra's Tosca. Sondra, welcome to Opera Box Score. We just recorded an interview for my other job, and I have a couple minutes to hang out with you. You are in a run of Tosca right now that has been really well received by the New York audiences. It's sold out. I don't know what the last sold out show at the Metropolitan Opera was. Maybe Fire Shut Up in My Bones, like right after the pandemic or something.
Medea.
Oh, that was also you. Nice. And I know something about Medea that I can't say yet, but very exciting opera.
Yes, coming soon to a theater near you.
So you're in your like Puccini era, and I was trying to set up my WFMT interview to talk about your bel canto bona fides. And you approach repertoire so much with, this technical expertise. And you said something so mind-blowing to me that Turandot is easy for you. Yep.
Honestly, I love singing her. I think it's written so beautifully for the voice. And the way that he got the character into the high notes. She doesn't start out right away with all pounding these high notes. No. In Questa Regia, the aria is really kind of very lyric. And it's a great setup then for the riddles and then the last scene. For me, vocally, it's perfect.
It's like like all that recitation in the beginning is like a warm up for you.
Yes, it really is, because it sits at, it sits in a very nice place. It's not too high, it's not too low. Great.
So I don't know how many times you've sung it yet, but have you worked out a signal with the tenor so that they can let you know, okay, I got to get off this note now?
How many times have I sung? I think I've done it 4 times now.
Okay.
Going to do my 5th in London in March and April. But you kind of feel it. You can feel when a tenor is ready to get off the note, or if he's really feeling good with it, or when I have to get off of it. And I've been fortunate to do it with some great tenors, Jonas Kaufmann, Yusuf, Piotr Bachawa. I mean, very lucky. Brian Jade, really lucky. So they're all great musicians, but night to night it changes. That's the beauty of live opera.
Yeah. You heard the stories of, I don't know, Franco Corelli, like, was it biting Birgit Nielsen's ear or something like that? Like there was something where like they were doing a Turandot and they were getting into like a war with each other about who could hold it longer.
Yeah, well, I always believe I'm very fortunate. I love all my colleagues. I think we're all very supportive of each other. I'm sure back in the day, people were allowed to be a bit more diva or divo. Yeah. But truly, one of my favorite singers in the whole business, besides Bryn Terfel, is Piotr Bachawa. And he would never, ever do that to me, and I would never, ever do that to him. And I think it's all about us lifting each other up and making a great ensemble. But that said, there have been moments in the earlier part of my career where you just want to smack somebody in the head and sing louder than them and sing longer. But it's not good.
Well, speaking about like this era that we're in of like just being more supportive and also the media landscape that we're in, I do want to talk about your podcast, Screaming Divas, because I think people would be surprised to know like how down to earth you are and how open you are about the career and about the craft. And it's definitely very different than, the mysterious XYZ singer from, the golden age,
Right. Well, this is 2025. And I really feel that opera needs to be de-stuffified. We need to show people that opera is actually cool and interesting, and that all modern opera, it all came from the same place. Music came from the same place. Let's be real here. We had opera first, before we had pop, before we had country, before we had blues, before we had jazz. We had opera. And I think that my goal, and Carrie Alcama, my counterpart in Screaming Divas, is really to inform people and to make opera less boring. I mean, opera is not boring. Opera is exciting. And when you get a good production with good singers, and it's thrilling, isn't it? And that's what Carrie and I want to do. We want to show people that all these opera singers that we talk to, how much work it is, how hard it is, and how fun it is, and that we're just normal people who put our pants on the exact same way everyone else does.
And how athletic it is. And I said this in the formal interview, but you are doing things that put you in demand for only the most difficult roles. It's like, now, you sing Norma now, so you have to sing Norma. Now you have contracts, I'm sure, like in the future to sing Norma. And that is, that's not an easy sing, I don't know how many you can do in your life before you're like, okay, I got to stop. That's like enough of that,
Well, funny. I'm talking to you right now with bruised ribs because of an accident on stage that happened with the Tosca. So, it's difficult what we do, and trying to sing, let alone putting our brain, which is such a big part of what we do as a singer. Our brain is involved in our whole vocal production. And if you're having a bad day, or if you've just like me, gone through a divorce and had some really crappy days. And then you have to walk on stage and become someone else and put all of that aside, even though your body is super tight from all the screaming and yelling you just done. It's hard. It's really hard because you feel like a person with two different personalities. And that's what Carrie and I are trying to do with the Screaming Divas, is create awareness and lifting that veil of mysteriousness, I think, that's been shrouded around opera. It's music, and it's cool music. And we want people to listen to opera and keep coming to opera because it's amazing, beautiful music. And Carrie and I are going to be putting together some exciting concerts in the next year, which we hope everybody's going to come and listen to.
A little bit of the end of Act 2 from the new recording of Turandots featuring Jonas Kaufmann as Kalof and the Santa Cecilia Academy Orchestra and Chorus led by Sir Antonio Pappano. So there are 3 performances of the Puccini Heroines next month, February, the 8th, the 13th, and the 16th. I think we're all going, but not at the same time.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave.
Yeah.
On the days in between, are they just going to like lock her up in a hyperbaric chamber? Because I don't know, how does one do this concert 3 times, let alone 1?
She can do anything. This famously.
I'm already tired just thinking about this concert.
She sings Norma, and I think her best aria is actually the end of the opera, De non volermi vittime. So I think her technique is strong, and that she doesn't ever do anything that is not bel canto.
And she has so many different like colors and textures of her voice available to her, and like boy does she use them, which makes for really exciting listening. Oliver, you years ago, this is like one of those things from like my
but don't say anything that I might have said years ago.
When you were doing an Oliver's Corner on Turandot, you talked about the part of the end of Act 2 where like the chorus sopranos are definitely trying to compete with Birgit Nilsson for who can sing the best high C. And like I think that this new Sondra recording is probably like the most blowout of a competition between the Turandot and a high C that I've heard since that Nilsson recording was made.
I'm so glad you didn't say I said something about somebody years ago, because the answer is yes, I did, and I'm so embarrassed about it. But those shows aren't indexed well, so it's hard to find.
It's under lock and key. But you know what's not under lock and key? This show. Help us find more people. Help us spread the word about Opera Box Score by giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And if you have a few extra moments, why not write a review? Just don't say anything about our diction, please, or my sassy attitude. That's why people come. I give the people what they want.
Yeah, you got something to say? Then yeah, all right, you can say something. This is Listener Mailbag.
So today we have 2 listener mailbags, all of them, or both of them, pertaining to recent vocal activity at Carnegie Hall, starting with friend of the show, PJ Ewing.
Hello, Opera Box Score. It's PJ from New York with a quick report about Art Song and Song Studio. This is my 3rd year running, attending Song Studio. In this case, we had Renee Fleming, Anthony Roth Costanzo, Bryn Terfel, and Hartmut Hole as our masterclass leaders throughout the week. The kids, or the young singers, are as follows: Margaret Teague, soprano; Sophia Baete, mezzo-soprano; Matthew McKinney, tenor; Anton Kirchhoff, baritone; Jasmine Saunders, soprano; June Shin, soprano; and Joël Terin, now a tenor, formerly a baritone. That was really fun to see him again in this format. Some of those singers you might even recognize already. For instance, Jasmine Saunders is our Carabino in the upcoming production of The Marriage of Figaro here at the Metropolitan Opera. It was a thrill to be there. It always is, to see the work happening before your very eyes, acknowledging that we all know it's a matter of opinion, right? In terms of, is there a right way or a wrong way to do a particular song? But it's really fun to watch it all happen right in front of your eyes. It's really rarefied air up there on the 10th floor in the Weil Hall. A lot of the opera glitterati are there in the audience, a lot of tastemakers. It's kind of exciting to be there just to see the voices of the future singing right before our very eyes. That's my report. This is PJ from New York. I'll report again soon.
Thanks, PJ. We have another listener mailbag on Carnegie Hall.
What is this, Carnegie Hall box score? It's all in the delivery.
This one comes from friend of the show, Zara, and she saw a performance of Orchestra of St Luke's conducted by my husband, Raphael Pichon, featuring soprano Ying Fang. They made a really cool commercial for this performance with Ying Fang. Here's what Ying Fang has to say about Carnegie Hall.
Carnegie Hall has always been a very special place for me, and I think for many artists, because it's one of the most prestigious venues in the world.
Hey Opera Box Score fans, this is Zara in New York, congratulating two friends of the show, Ying Fang and Ryan Speedo Green, for two very special concerts this past week at Carnegie Hall. In Mein Traum, which was performed on Thursday night, the conductor Raphael Pichon created a program for the Orchestra of St Luke's inspired by a text Schubert wrote in 1822 that became known by the title Mein Traum, or My Dream. It deals with loss and rejection in a familial rather than a romantic context, and describes wandering and singing, quote, with a heart full of infinite love for those who spurned that love, end quote. The dimensions of this mood were explored in oratorio, operatic, and symphonic music by Schubert, as well as songs performed by the baritone Christian Gerhard. And if one wondered why, with all this color and drama to choose from, Ave Maria was on the program, one learned that it was so Ying Fang could sing this ubiquitous piece as if it were being shared for the first time. The performance began with a minute of silence, unannounced, after which a light illuminated Ying Fang, who was standing in one of the boxes, and began to sing Lacrimosa son io, joined by the trebles of Ensemble Altera. Their singing was so pristine throughout the concert that they seemed to realize the final scene of Mein Traum, of a blessed circle of worshippers where, quote, I felt as if eternal bliss were concentrated in a single instant, end quote. Carnegie Hall also presented Ryan Speedo Green on Wednesday night in his Carnegie solo recital debut. He and the pianist Adam Nielsen had already performed this program in Tucson, Denver, and Los Angeles, which I think means I can reveal the encores, and I hope they'll continue to perform it so that more people have the chance to hear Speedo in this repertoire. And yes, I have been personally invited to call him Speedo, as I expect most people have who have introduced themselves to him, or have possibly even forgotten to introduce themselves when offering their compliments after a performance. My favorite was the Songs and Dances of Death by Mussorgsky, which are so thrilling in Speedo's voice and interpretation. But the entire program, including songs by Hugo Wolf, Howard Swanson, Schubert, and Mahler, as well as Die Frist ist from the Flying Dutchman, was introduced and performed thoughtfully and with great assurance. The encores, A Boy of Peculiar Grace from Fire Shut Up in My Bones, and Edelweiss from The Sound of Music, felt like a special treat. Speedo is such a generous performer and bright spirit that even the bleakest texts offered us human connection and warmed us with his light. Finally, I'd like to thank Opera Box Score for being a light in the darkness. I was inspired to donate after hearing last week's podcast and realizing how much I rely on our hosts as a moral center in these times, and how much their work brightens my life. Thanks, guys.
Dann werde ich in nichts vergehen, an alle Toten auferstehen, dann werde ich in nichts vergehen, in nimm mich auf.
Die Frist ist from a performance by Ryan Speedo Green and Adam Nielsen in concert at Austin Opera. Sounds like a similar concert to what they performed at Carnegie Hall. Thanks again to Zara, and thank you for the donation. It means really a lot
It
to
really
us. Every little bit helps. I just got the Zoom bill. And I think with Brian's donation and Zara's donation, we might be in the black with Zoom. So we have something in the bank for it. Next year's
We'll take
bill.
it.
We're still playing off all that blackmail money from Enemy of the Show Tobias Wright, so we really need the help.
I am very jealous of Zara for getting to hear Ying Fang. I'm crazy. You know that I'm crazy about her. And if you are also a fan of Ying Fang,
For good reason.
go into our archives and hear our interview from Santa Fe Opera when she was singing Susanna in Marriage of Figaro.
Though I would listen to her sing Susanna, too, if she wanted to.
Maybe. Yeah. And of course, Raphael Pichon, my future husband. Man, why doesn't he come to Chicago? Who's going to bring Raphael Pichon to Chicago?
It's up to you, Oliver. You got to send him a love note.
Sabine Devielle, sorry. I need to borrow your man.
Well, just in time for Oliver's pending nuptials, support the OBS team by going to operaboxscore.com and clicking on the Support the Team tab. There's also an Oliver Wedding Fund. It's hidden, though. You have to find it. It's like an Easter egg. Every donor receives an OBS beer mat, an exclusive OBS lapel pin, and gets a shout out on an episode like you just heard. Heck, if you support us enough, we'll even name the episode after you, especially if your name is 2 Minute Drill, which is next.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Soprano Janine de Beek took to Facebook to speak out against her critics. Dear native speaker, for those of you who are not vocal diction coaches in opera or actually not part of my team, I kindly request that you fundamentally hold your unsolicited direct or indirect comments to me about diction. For the nationalists in opera who prefer to see your nationality/race represented on stage because somehow the opera defines your very existence as a people, I thank your ancestors for colonizing the rest of the world and spreading classical music. We gave you spices, so deal. Sincerely yours, me.
Lise Davidsen is pregnant with twins and is canceling her performances from mid-March through the end of the year. I'm very excited about their arrival and my new life with them, said the Norwegian diva. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the leaders of the opera houses I was due to sing at. Thank you for your kind words, understanding, and support. Davidsen's pregnancy means that she will be withdrawing from Covent Garden's new diva Valkyrie. Natalia Romanev has already been announced as her replacement Sieglinde, making her role debut.
Jonas Kaufmann is opening up about why he is singing the prologue to Pagliacci, usually sung by a baritone. Quote, I have no plans for now to start singing baritone roles. This prologue is for a barytenor. He added that Canio's tessitura is lower and is not a big stretch. He also noted that his colleague, Adam Plaketka, is singing both Alfio and Tonio, and it gives him a break throughout the opera.
Casting pup date. Director Ellen Kent is searching for a well-behaved, small to medium-sized dog to star in a production of La Boheme in February. The successful dog will appear alongside the Musetta, and the dog's owner must be willing to go on stage in costume and look after their pet.
David Daniels is suing the University of Michigan over his 2020 firing. Claiming his rights were violated during the process, Daniels worked as a voice professor from 2015 and was granted tenure, but was fired after an investigation found he had inappropriately solicited at least 3 students.
Following a winter storm, friends of the show Opera Creole and Opera Lafayette were forced to reschedule the premiere of Morjan. The showcase of the earliest extant complete opera by a Black American took place on January 24th and will be live-streamed on February 7th from its performance at the University of Maryland at no cost to viewers.
The Berliner Staatsoper has announced that it is cutting a new production from the 25-26 season to account for approximately €5 million of budget cuts. General Director Elizabeth Sobotka also clarified that the company will continue to hire stars like Anna Netrebko, noting that A-listers no longer make as much as they used to. Said Sobotka, quote, she sticks to our maximum fee, but on the other hand, she brings us very good income, which is more than balanced.
The Marian Anderson Museum is set to reopen February 23rd after the completion of over $500,000 of repairs from flood damage in 2021. That is, unless an executive order forces it to remain closed because of DEI or something.
Oh, Jesus.
Members of the chorus at Opera de Toulon were shocked to hear that they would be fired at the end of the 2024-25 season. The company claimed that the board and administration decided to dismiss 21 singers as a result of budget cuts. The chorus members are set to take legal action as they believe the company will likely hire temporary singers to replace them.
In major awards news, Jeon-ho Lee won first place and the audience favorite award at Houston Grand Opera's Concert of Arias competition earlier this month. The Korean baritone sang 2 chestnuts of Italian opera, the prologue from Pagliacci, which is getting a lot of airtime this week, and Eri Tu from Un ballo in maschera. Congratulations also to second place winner Georgian tenor Luca Tsevelidze, third place winner American soprano Lauren Carroll, and Romanian soprano Daria Lupu, the winner of the Ana Maria Martinez Encouragement Award.
Sir Simon Rattle has received the 2025 Ernst von Siemens Music Prize and its €250,000 award in recognition of his lifelong contributions to music. Also, Opera Index honored Sir Bryn Tervel with its Distinguished Achievement Award for his work in opera and his dedication to younger generations of singers through master classes and his new foundation at the Royal Welsh College of Music.
In news that is devastating to Oliver Camacho personally, Edward Lockman received an Academy Award nomination for Best Cinematography for his work on Pablo Larraín's Maria. This is the sole nomination the Maria Callas biopic received.
Exit stage right, soprano Deborah Lifton has died at age 48 following a year-long battle with cancer. The Long Island native performed frequently in the U.S. and abroad, including at the Greve Opera Festival and Connecticut Lyric Opera. She also taught at a number of colleges across the Northeast.
Tenor Paul Charles Clark has died at age 59 after suffering a heart attack. Winner of the 1989 Kathleen Ferrier competition, Clark's successful international career brought him to such institutions as Glyndebourne, Deutsche Oper Berlin, Santa Fe Opera, and the Met. Among the roles he was known for were Don José in Carmen, Pollione in Norma, Edgardo and Lucia di Lammermoor, and the title roles in Benvenuto Cellini, Werther, and Don Carlos.
Soprano Barbara Herna has died at age 80. She got her start at the Landestheater Dessau and as a soloist at the Saxon State Opera Dresden, and went on to sing a variety of Mozart leading roles, primarily in Dresden and Berlin, before becoming a much sought-after concert singer across the globe.
And on this day, January 27th, in 1756, it was the birth of the GOAT, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Ever heard of him?
In 1784, Belgian composer Martin Joseph Mangal was born. Ever heard of him? In 1806, composer Juan Cristimo Jacopo Antonio de Arriaga was born. We included him just because his name is fun to say. And in 1823, it's the birth of composer Edward Lalo of Le Roi Dix fame. Other important dates include the premiere of Niccolò Piccini's Roland in Paris in 1778, the first performance of the second version of Boris Godunov in 1874, that's by Modest Mussorgsky. 1955 saw the first performance of The Midsummer Marriage by Michael Tippett, which we think starred Joan Sutherland.
It sure did.
In 1961, a soprano named Leontine Price made her debut at the Met.
Ever heard of her?
And on this day, January 27th, in 1972, it was the world premiere of Scott Joplin's rediscovered Tremonisha in Atlanta.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
just a little bit of Leontyne Price's Met debut, Leonora in Il Trovatore, with Irene Dallas and Franco Corelli, conducted by Fausto Cleva. Is that what you said,
That's
Matt?
the one.
Apparently, she had a triumph and a standing ovation that lasted over 40 minutes, one of the longest in the Mets history.
Yeah, clearly it amounted to nothing for her career. So.
Yeah, too bad that was a flash in the pan.
Really quickly, I don't know how old we could probably do the math, how old she was in 19...
I just love the bold creative choice of making us do math in the middle of speaking about something live.
Yeah, sometimes that music and math connection doesn't always pan out, buddy.
She was 34 years old.
Well, I mean, 34 is definitely, prime years for a soprano, but just like her phrasing that we just heard those phrases, like, how dare she? How dare she? I mean, I think
I am offended at how good she is.
Rachel Willis Sorensen goes for phrases like that. Sondra Radvanovsky also goes for phrases like that. But you listen to next time you hear Trovatore, take out your watch and see how long.
Antonia Testella's not giving you that, let's say. No shade to her. She's done some great work, but you only Leontyne Price.
Yeah.
Only you. Lots of stuff going on in the news this week, but I think the thing we really want to make sure we get into is this Janine de Beek story. So who wants to break it down for us?
So Janine de Beek posted on Facebook it was just a regular old post, like no video, no nothing, just like a post about, her critics who complain about her diction. And she said basically what we quoted in the 2-minute drill. Now, granted, her speaking out made it sound like she was being criticized for her race and not just her diction. There's no indication that the critic was talking about her race, but maybe it's implied.
I mean, it's France.
Yeah.
The dog whistles are dog whistling.
Then Slip Disc, our friend Norman Lebrecht, had to amplify her Facebook post.
Speaking of dog whistles.
Yeah. After he did this, that is when this Facebook post sort of went viral. And then she started getting a lot of comments and a lot of, pushback against what she said on Facebook. So here she is going to her Facebook followers who ostensibly follow her because they like her and trying to vent. And then Norman Lebrecht takes it and turns it into something that makes her seem like the reverse racist.
Yeah, he's never done anything like that before.
And then she goes to Facebook Live and she talks about her experience, on social media and receiving all of this, backlash against what she said and having her have to break down every one of her sentences and about, being colonized she's from Trinidad, Tobago,
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, and she's sincere. It's like, yeah, your people came to the Caribbean. And that's how I learned about classical music. So this is what you get, I'm now here doing my best. And, if you're on my team, you can tell me about my diction, but, the rest of you can, kick rocks or whatever you like to say, and she was very upset and she was crying and, she's a very strong woman and she didn't start off crying, but by the time she got to the end of this Facebook Live, which is about 10, 12 minutes, she was visibly emotional. And she said she was probably going to take all of this down. And she did. So the Facebook post is gone and the Facebook Live video is gone. And, I'm a fan of hers and, she's a phenomenon
Mm-hmm.
and she's doing so much great work to, bring new audiences to opera through her charisma and through her skill. And, to have this happen. So same thing happened to Angel Blue, with the whole blackface. I mean, I'm conflating two different stories now, but it's social media is just, it's broken.
Well, it's
It's a mess.
Classical music fans are known to be pretty picky. And they also tend to dial it up to 11 when people from underrepresented communities are involved in the performance of these works. It's a pattern that we see happening over and over and over again, and it's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the thing that really... okay, a couple of thoughts here. Number one, she's not singing in her native language. A lot of opera singers don't. The native language of Trinidad is English Creole, I think. So this is absolutely going to be a second language for her, many other opera singers do. Number two, if it's a hell of an instrument. It's a hell of a voice. I'm sure she's singing the absolute pants off this role. If the thing that you have to criticize is the diction, then she's doing a hell of a lot right. And I need everybody to calm the F down. Number 3, I can't help but consider the optics of how monstrous this would be if shoes were on different feet. Let's say I went to a production at the Lyric and there was somebody who was singing the role of Susanna in Carlisle Floyd, for example, and that Susanna happened to be of Asian descent, and I had the full-throated audacity to challenge the English diction of someone who is from a country that is not I would be absolutely crucified for something like that. And that's not to say, and I shouldn't do that because that's monstrous, but the fact that there are people piling onto her when it just seems so clear that everybody needs to calm down and it's not that big of a deal.
I've always been, speaking as someone who can't pronounce any French, as Oliver has pointed out repeatedly, I think
to your face, behind your back. I mean, take your pick.
I think that diction, while is something, as a singer to strive for, to do accurately, to try to make it be as understandable as possible. And I think that there's some dramatic effect in really being able to hit a vowel correctly or whatever. I do think that it is it's kind of a vestige that of an era of opera that hasn't existed for a long time. We are not in the age where we were, 50 years ago when there were no super titles, right? We're not translating operas into English to be heard, in the moment. And while it's nice if you speak those languages to not have to look up, I suppose, I've been to plenty of operas that were in English or in, some form of German where I did speak a little bit of the language, a little bit of English, and I could tell the diction wasn't there, but, it really doesn't matter if the performance is good. The point of opera, I think, is that the expressivity is in the music. It is not in the words. The words are a nice bonus.
I have 2 things I want to say, and then I'll hand it to Matt. 1, we singers modify vowels. I'm not saying Janine DeBeek's. I'm not saying Janine DeBeek's diction is perfect.
It's an acoustic necessity.
Yeah, but we have to modify vowels in order to just get the notes out sometimes. And 2, the goal of putting on a Rameau opera in a French opera house, this is Castor Pollux, is to get people to check out Rameau and for them to celebrate their history, French opera history. I promise you that more people went to see this opera because of Janine DeBeek than they did
100%. 100%.
And to summarize what a lot of what has been said on this panel, diction is a tool in the toolkit of the singer. It can be a very effective one. It can be a very expressive one. I bet these people who are taking to their internet warrior foxholes to criticize Janine DeBeek have listened to Joan Sutherland records before.
Right.
There are many, many wonderful singers whose diction can be and is criticized without taking away from their talent. It says more about the people making the critiques than it does about the singer or her artistry. And in this particular situation, the prism of race just makes it, and colonialism and the implications of that history, and especially when we're talking about the French language and how protective they are.
Not to mention the normal abrecht of it all.
Yeah. And how the non-white speakers of French have evolved with the language naturally, as it happens in any language and any dialect, across the globe. It's happening all the time. It just raises it brings a lot of sore spots to the subject, to the surface of the topic, all at once. And when you have this environment where you can say anything that you want to a public figure because they're a public figure, so they deserve to hear your nastiest thoughts, that is going to be, it already is just an absolutely intractable situation.
Well, Janine, if this makes it to you, know that we here at OBS are and always will be Team Janine.
You are our queen.
We love. You know who else's team we're on? Lise Davidsen's. Yay!
Yeah! It's so exciting. I mean, she put this announcement out there. So excited. And it really is genuinely exciting when this stuff happens. Obviously, we at Opera Box Score have a history of bringing on mothers in classical music and talking to them about their experiences, because it is a difficult job. Being a parent is a difficult job, and combining that with the excesses of having to travel and sing and keep your instrument in working order is incredibly difficult and requires a lot of support. So whatever we can do to help, Lisa, let us know.
Yeah. We're holding
We're here.
space for the people who had tickets to see her, and their disappointment is valid, but not as important as her health.
Yes.
So deal with it.
Next time
Yeah.
you're in Chicago, free babysitting services. I'm great with twins.
But we're still going to get her Fidelio, which is the last role that she will sing, and it's one of the HD broadcasts from the Met. So,
Oh, yeah.
That is very exciting. Less exciting, budget cuts. Let's talk about them.
Berlin and Toulon. Obviously, I've been talking a lot about Berlin the past few weeks, especially. But, this is, pretty symptomatic of the general economic malaise and austerity politics going on across the continental Europe. Obviously, Berlin is a little bit more localized. I'm a little bit less familiar with Toulon's local politics, but I assume it's in the same sort of vein. It is rough out there, and
Retrenchment as far as the eye can see.
absolutely. And it's one of those situations where, it's really hard as an American sitting here and, I've said it before, watching the cuts and the funding starting to trickle away, and just like crossing our fingers and hoping that what happened to us here in the United States does not happen to them. Because, it's a dark day if any of these houses really, go under in the way a lot of ours have.
well,
So-
I've spent some time recently with I can't say who, but internationally renowned orchestra. I've spent time with their board and their leader, and they're also experiencing budget cuts,
Yeah.
and they're trying to figure out what to do. And they're looking to the U.S. for models for how to sustain through patronage.
I
and
don't
get
know
away
if
from-
we're the ones to
Ruh-roh,
watch.
Yeah.
as they say.
Well, we've had to. I mean,
To quote Felicity Huffman.
I think it's, obviously, like, we've had to deal without state patronage for a long time, by European standards, certainly, but it is hard. And I think, honestly, the move is to fight tooth and nail to keep state funding. That's honestly, I think, a better solution and path forward for long-term sustainability than depending on patrons. That's my personal opinion.
I mean, Berlin is one of the big ones, and so far they've only talked about cutting a production and not cutting, staff or chorus members. But I mean, there was a time.
Or Anna Netrebko.
On a Netrebko.
There was
Good to know she'll still be making a paycheck. Am I right, Ashley?
There was a time, and I think it still is the time, where American singers would go to Germany because you can get a steady paycheck there.
Yeah.
Right.
With
Steady
government
employment.
benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as chief legal correspondent for Opera Box Score, I had to get a little nugget in here about this lawsuit that David Daniels has filed in federal court in Detroit. They're already threatening to throw this lawsuit out. It's a little bit ridiculous. Also, one of the students who made the allegations against David Daniels is another of the defendants in the suit. So it's actually University of Michigan and one of these students. But there's not. I just don't think this is going to go.
We'll throw in some allegedlys here just in case.
Allegedly, just for all the things I'm about to say. But I mean, this case is pretty ridiculous. They're filing it in federal court, which honestly, I think they would have had a better shot in state court. But, that means his lawyer didn't have a very good strategy. So we will see how this goes. But I'd put, $20 down that in a couple of weeks, we have a follow-up that says that this case gets thrown out in Detroit. Oliver, I'm just so sorry that Lockman got his Oscar nod. I'm sure you're devastated by that, but are you also devastated for Miss Angie Jolie?
When I saw this movie, I as I already said, I was just really disappointed, like from start to finish. The first 5 minutes, there's some Maria Callas cosplay, which is kind of fun. But the rest of the movie is pretty joyless. And I do feel bad for Angelina Jolie because it sounds like she worked really hard to inhabit this role. But the movie's not good. The movie's not good. So I don't want to force people to see a movie just to watch a performance that doesn't really serve Maria Callas' career or opera.
And it is an interesting Best Actress lineup this year. Like one of the most
It
toss-up-y
is.
years that I can certainly remember.
Truly.
So
I'm sad about Pamela Anderson not getting nominated, but I'm Mikey Madison all the way.
Yeah, and Isabella Rossellini and her 2.5 minutes of acting that is at the front and center of the film Conclave.
the best printing I've ever seen.
I mean, I would watch Isabella Rossellini do literally anything, so we love her, but I also love Cynthia Erivo, and you're right, Mikey Madison, so twill be an interesting lineup. Not nearly as interesting, however, as the dog casting that needs to happen for this production in La Boheme. So this is an English director who it's going to be a Ukrainian company that's coming to do this production. But yeah, they want Musetta to have a dog, so they were very specific in her having a small to medium-sized dog, and then the owner has to be on stage, okay, twist my arm. I'm about to go get a dog just so I can do this. Will they take a cat instead? Because me and Grandpa, we could go do this.
It's giving Minnie Driver in the Phantom of the Opera movie, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I am ready to grab my dog right now and take her across the pond.
Weston, you can live our dream. Weston, do it.
We can do it. We can, and with your help, you can pay for the ticket. operaboxscore.com. For my dog's audition.
We are absolutely crushing it this week, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. You know what? Why don't we wrap this show up?
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. This is the way we end every episode. Oliver Camacho, we'll start with you.
I actually am trying to keep it positive, and I have two good calls. The New York Times published a really beautiful pictorial on the Palais Garnier and their anniversary, which we will link to the website show notes. My other good call is that this week, the day after you hear this episode on January 31st, L'Arpeggiata's brand new album will be released, which features Malena Erdmann as the
mother of Greta Thunberg.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So she's one of our, what was that segment we did? That wasn't Hall of Fame. It was something. We did that too long ago.
It was 3 weeks ago, and it's completely off my head.
It was.
Let us know at mailbag@operaboxscore.com.
If you've been indexing our episodes like I'm supposed to be.
Okay, so quickly, the idea of Terra Mater is a celebration of nature through music, mostly Baroque music. And Malena Erdmann, who is a climate activist in her own right, is the soloist. Once again, the mother of Greta Thunberg. She was on the cusp of an international career when her daughter was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, forcing her to pause her singing activities and then become a climate activist herself. So it sort of is a nice full circle for Malena to be back in the international spotlight.
Matt Cummings.
So as we enter, to quote my favorite musical about chess tournaments happening during the Cold War, chess, dangerous and difficult times, trademark. I have been trying to break the cycle of doom scrolling as best as I can, because we need to hold space for more than the lyrics of Defying Gravity in this moment. And so what I've been trying to do to make that work for me and my social media addiction is to go analog. And so I've really been leaning into listening to vinyls, because there's something very comforting in the ritual of putting the record on the turntable. There's something really nice about how you have a built-in break every 25 minutes or so to get up and flip the disc over so you can actually focus on what you're paying attention to, and have you use that I forget what it's called, the time management plan that pretty much works out exactly that way. If you remember what that's called, email us at operaboxscore@gmail.com. So that's my good call. I recommend that folks who should try it out, and whatever you can do to add some distance from the goings-on in the world, but stay in touch with what you love, try it.
Weston Williams.
I have a good call for Matt that I just thought of in the moment because you're talking about vinyl. I just got a recording of Stravinsky's L'Histoire du Soldat featuring Sting, not as a musician, but as a narrator, and Ian McClellan, I think. It's incredible. I have a good call along that vein as well. If you don't want to cool off and, chill with some vinyl, I suggest a good piece of rage music that I've been losing my hearing to over the past week is a friend of the show, Gil Rose's and the Boston Modern Orchestra Project. Their recording of George Antheil's Ballet Mécanique, which is the original orchestration, which is loud and involves sirens and a lot of pounding drums, which is very much my vibe at the moment. And I'm sure it is yours too, Ashley.
Weston, I think that we can probably kill two birds with one stone here if you come over and we can listen to the Teufels of Loudon LP that I have.
I have one too.
I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. So for my call this week, since we are in this place where some people need to go analog to calm down, some people need to be listening to rage. If you're someone who is in America or an American who is here or abroad, and you have any interest in sort of our civic and our sociopolitical landscape, come sit next to me. But also, there's so much to be angry about, and there's so much where I call this the Blitzkrieg era. There's just so many things being thrown at us to induce our rage each day, and in short, that's kind of what they want. You know who they is. And so one of the things that's keeping me centered and keeping me grounded is a book by Tim Snyder. It's called On Tyranny. The subtitle is 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. Tim Snyder is a Yale professor. It's a really great way to sort of remember what matters in the moment when the tornado is all around you. There's actually a really lovely illustrated version of the book as well. So if you like pictorials with your civic thoughts and responsibility journals, you could definitely do that. But it's also, it's a quick read, it's an easy read, and it's a way to help center me for all of the things that are to come. And I hope that it can center you as well. Oliver, you have something else you want to add before we wrap up?
L'Histoire du Soldat.
You're part of the problem, Oliver. Canceled.
That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, get your voice heard, and find links to stuff we've talked about, including Oliver's diction coaching, on our website, operaboxscore.com. That is also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to OBS like our two big heroes from earlier in the episode using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Woodell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Your audio editor is Weston Williams. The executive producer of OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Matt Cummings with guest Sondra Radvanovsky, I am Ashley Hardgrave, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as Jonas Kaufmann test drives Eddie 2 and other baritone arias. We're back with an all-new show next week when Michael Spires takes a free throw on his baritone Fach, for real this time. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more little dogs not too small. Join us.